Hi everyone, welcome to another camera comparison. It has been a while, so I've got the iPhone 15 Pro Max with its 12 megapixel front-facing camera up against the 12 megapixel front-facing camera of the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. That's 4K 30, they're all 4K 30 at the moment, and then the Huawei P60 Pro with a 13 megapixel front-facing camera. So you can see the Huawei, it's got a ultra-wide front-facing camera, can fit a lot more in the shot. Now all three of them here are using electronic image stabilization, and I will be swapping over the audio sources so we can hear which one of these three mobile phones has the best microphones and picks up the least amount of wind noise. So they all look very similar here, apart from, well, the field of view of course we do get with the Huawei, and a bit of a jog testing the stabilization. Not that you'd ever be doing this. Normally you'd try and just pan around really smooth. Let's take a look at those rear cameras now. Rear main cameras, they've all got, all three of them, optical and electronic image stabilization. So the Samsung S23 Ultra does have a 200 megapixel camera, and we've got a 48 megapixel camera with the P60 Pro and 48 with the iPhone 15 Pro Max. So electronic image stabilization, 4K 30 at the moment here. So walking along pretty steady across all of them. And the 200 megapixel camera with our Samsung, does that give it an advantage for perhaps the electronic image stabilization crop? Panning, hopefully we see no judder visible. I have noticed actually a little bit come through, I think with the P60 Pro, a bit of judder here. So now jogging, testing that stabilization. They all do seem very steady, at least looking at their live previews. Zoom cameras now, video. So we've got 10 times with the S23 Ultra, 5 times optical with the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and then 3.5 times optical, which is currently at 4 times. That's the preset here with the P60 Pro, 4K 30 frames per second. Now I'm going to walk a little as I film, testing out their stability. You should of course be stationary when using the zoom cameras, especially for video. Ultra wide video, 4K 30. It's a lot more in the shot, but the quality does not look as good as the main cameras. So it's just electronic image stabilization. It's now a good time to test out wind noise too. There's quite a bit of it at the moment. I've noticed that the iPhone microphones certainly do suffer a lot from wind noise. As I walk along here, there should be no jitter, no judder coming through with the video when I pan around. Rear video now, this is 4K 30 across all three, and it's almost 2 o'clock in the morning, so it is very, very dark here, and I don't want to shout, I don't want to wake up the neighbors. So I wanted to check on that lens flare issue that you can see with the iPhone and the P60 Pro. It's happening. There's a bit of lens flare there, but the Samsung S23 Ultra seems to be handling this the best. As I move about here, there's little LED lights. Seeing quite a bit of it on, yeah, the P60 Pro and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. There's a tiny bit with the S23 Ultra. So it seems to be the best there. Now, which one is going to have drop frames? Hopefully no judder as I pan about. Maybe a little bit coming through with the Huawei P60 Pro. Now looking over here, it's completely dark. Looks like there's a lot of noise across all three of them. Very difficult conditions, of course. Over to our stills now. So for front-facing portraits, the more pleasant shot is probably the iPhone, but the skin tone is a little too warm, but more details captured. Some skin smoothing with the P60 and S23 Pro. See here with portrait shots, this is where I feel the iPhone just dominates. If you're a mother that takes lots of portrait photos of your family, you probably want to get an iPhone, because look at the stitching here with the fine hairs that are blowing around. With my daughters in both of those shots I'm showing you here, you can see when you zoom in that the stitching is the best on the iPhone. Both the Samsung and the Huawei, they tend to cut out those loose hairs and doesn't look quite as natural as the iPhone's portrait shot. So for portraits, iPhone wins. This shot of a bright hibiscus in direct sunlight, very, very difficult. Now, looking at the colors, the reds, there is some clipping with the iPhone. The shot's a little too oversaturated. For me, it's the Samsung that gets the win with this shot. Close second is the Huawei. Close-up macro mode with this shot of these different multicolored flowers, and the background blur of the iPhone's not really good. The depth of field's not good. However, it's got the most detail, but I think the best shot is probably the Samsung with this one. So this photo is a lot harder than you would imagine to land. Now, the white in Vera's fur is very hard to capture those different details. There's a bit of clipping in both the Huawei and the Samsung. The iPhone does the best job with the whites. However, the white balance is a little off. It's not cream colored, her white fur, but actually quite a pure white. Ultra wide cameras now, so they all have a similar field of view, but it looks to be a little bit wider with the Samsung. I did find here the Samsung is over sharpened. When you zoom in, you crop in, this is 200%, you can see that difference. Now looking at the colors, it's between the Samsung and the iPhone. The Huawei is just a little too white, the white balance. They are all so close. If I'm going to pick one, I think it would be the iPhone because I just don't like the over sharpening that's been applied to the Samsung's ultra wide shot. Zoom cameras now, optical. I didn't use digital here at all. I just kept them all optical. So there is a massive difference because the Samsung's 10 times optical. Gets you in a lot closer. You can see far more detail. And overall, it's not bad until, yes, you crop in. So this is a 200% crop now. You can see a lot of noise with the Samsung. The iPhone, it looks okay, but it seems to be a little bit over sharpened to me. I do quite like the Huawei, but it's only 3.5 times. It depends what you want in zoom capabilities with your cameras, and all three of them, if you don't crop in, aren't bad. Back to the main cameras now. So all three of them look very similar at first glance, but the white balance, that is the Huawei that's more correct, true to life. The Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, this is a bit disappointing, I find. Now, it'd be great for social media, however, it is over sharpened. Look at it now when you crop in 200%. The iPhone's a good kind of blend of everything, not quite over sharpened here. The Huawei, maybe a little bit too soft for some, but that's the one I prefer, is the P60 Pro with this shot, which, yeah, it's a little softer, but I like it. Night mode shots now, where applicable with the iPhone. It is automatic, but it did go into a night mode equivalent. Now, the sky across all three of these does not look that good, but you can see that the Huawei handled it the best. Now, when you crop in, there's a lot of noise with the Samsung and the iPhone. I think here the Huawei handled this the best for the low light. In this photo, I feel the iPhone did the best with all the details in the pillar. The Huawei white balance was a little bit off. This selfie shot, all three look terrible. I also look terrible, but the iPhone's out of focus, not good. And then this shot, which was taken in basically completely black, it did a really good job. All three of them did a very good job here, but I feel it's the Huawei that has a slight edge here. It's looking a little bit sharper and slightly better low light night mode. Summarizing now, so the best video quality went for me to the iPhone, and why is that? Stabilization, detail, I think it was the best. Close second is the Samsung, third place the Huawei. Now audio quality, first place, Samsung. It suffered the least from the wind, although they all suffered from the wind noise. The Huawei was terrible with the wind noise. The iPhone was not that great either, and it just had the richer sound audio out of all three of them. The portrait shots, to me, this was a clear winner. Was the iPhone the best stitching? Yes, the shots look a little too warm. I would personally make them a bit cooler, but this is the default setting that I used across all of these on their latest firmware too as well, mind you. And the Huawei had the best low light performance, probably aided by the fact that it does have the faster, brighter lens. So it does have an f1.4 mechanical aperture that can go to f4.2, and that aided it in the low light performance. I did think that was very good. Now the ultra wide camera, that for me is the iPhone. I find that the Samsung shots are just too over sharpened for me. The Huawei is not bad ultra wide shot, better, slightly better field of view. And then the zoom shots, well, that is, of course, the Samsung. It's got the 10 times optical, but when you crop in on those shots, they look terrible. A lot of noise. I kind of liked a good balance there with the zoom shots being the Huawei, but that's just me personally. So let me know in the comments, do you agree with my findings? If you don't, well, let me know, and do subscribe for more camera comparisons up and coming. Thank you for watching.